Hello everyone, welcome to a product review at Phenomenal. Today we are going to analyze the Mirae Asset Large Cap Equity Fund. So as the name says, the fund primarily focuses on large cap stocks in India. Since it's a an active large cap fund, you expect it to outperform the large cap benchmark itself, right? I.e., Nifty 50 or Nifty 100, whichever benchmark you'd like it to be. Since it's primarily like 80% in stocks, right? So you either go with Nifty 50 or Nifty 100. When I first looked at this fund, it was pretty impressive given the track record until I looked at the exposures, and also when you rebase it to another period, it was actually underperforming the benchmark. I'll quickly show you what I mean by that. But before that, this fund is managing about 37,000 crores. That is a lot of money to be managed under this fund, which you can actually invest in some benchmark, like a Nifty 50 or Nifty 100 benchmark, for which you don't have to think too much about. Without further ado, let me show you what I meant by the exposures and how this fund turned out to be not so impressive after getting dissecting the fund itself. So when you look at it, right, when I first came to this tab, I was like, okay, fine. Like Nifty 50 seems like the right benchmark here since it's a large cap fund. And when you look at this fund has outperformed, right, clearly, right? But until you see the other chart where it shows the excess return, again, it's not so clearly evident, right, until you look at the trends here. So you can see that until this point, right, like December of 2017, or almost like start of 2018, it's just going up and up and up and up compared to Nifty 50. Then suddenly it just stays flat, meaning it just is following or even underperforming Nifty 50, right? So this raises a question, right? What happened here that made this fund not just go up and up and just stay flat, that is giving returns similar to Nifty 50? To find out that, you can get into the return-based factor exposure analysis, which gives you a clear picture of the underlying exposures itself without looking at the holdings. What you see here is a consistent size exposure up until June, July of 2019, right? Even till like 2019, mid of 2019, you can see a consistent small cap exposure, that is no small and mid cap exposure. So at this point, we can easily conclude that the almost all the outperformance came in the first 3 to 4 years because of the small cap exposure. But wait a second, this is a large cap fund. How can there be small cap funds or small cap stocks in it, right? So this is where I think in India there are funds which gets renamed constantly here and there because of the SEBI classification or SEBI rules, right? I think around 2018, 2019, SEBI issued a reclassification kind of a rule where large cap fund needs to allocate 80% of their allocation to large cap stocks, right? So this fund actually previously was classified as a multi cap fund. Then they changed the multi cap fund into a large cap fund, right? So when it was a multi-cap fund, you have the exposure to a lot of these small cap stocks. But once they switched it to a large cap fund, they have to have 80% of their allocation to just large cap, right? And hence the underperformance, right? So you can also see here about 85% of the stocks are allocated to large cap, right? So we can easily conclude from this, right, that this fund, from its inception, if you just compare it to a large cap, it has outperformed. But this is not the same fund as it was before. Before it was a multi-cap fund. To showcase that, I will go to Asset Comparer and rebase this to 2019, and you will see the evidence clearly. right? So again, same story here. But until 2019, it was a multi-cap fund. So the most of its exposures, most of its outperformance came from the small cap stock, as I mentioned, right? You can also check that there's still a size exposure over the last 13 years, right? So when I rebase it to let's take 2018 itself, right? Boom, right? You can see that Nifty Bees actually outperforms this, and the trends are actually pretty much the same, right? There is no outperformance whatsoever for this large cap active fund, right? That's quite completely a different story, right? If you had seen this chart first from 2018, right? Your first impression would have been completely different from what you saw here, right? I think this is the awesome thing about analyzing the funds in terms of exposures, right? So fund managers often change their exposure, so it's always good to understand what the fund has done historically, right? So that you can easily identify where the pitfalls are. So I think that brings us to the end of the video. What we have learned from this analysis is that just don't go by the performance, because performance can be very deceiving most times. And this is where the return based factor exposure analysis helps you a lot in dissecting the fund and seeing where the exposures in general are coming from. Is the fund manager actually adding any value to the portfolio? And mind you, this fund is charging 0.74%, which is a lot, right? Compared to Nifty 50, like if you just take Nifty Bees, right? The Nippon, where is it? It is here, right? 0.05%. It's like a joke, right? It's almost like what, 10, 15 times lower the fees itself, right? And you get the outperformance for fraction of the cost. That concludes the video. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.